Right now, as you're watching this, somewhere in Africa or Asia, a pangolin is being pulled from its burrow. Its scales are being ripped off while it's still alive. It's being stuffed into a crate with dozens of others, stacked like cargo, barely able to breathe. Within days it will be dead. This is happening to millions of pangolins every single year. They are the most trafficked mammal on Earth, more than elephants, more than rhinos, more than any other animal. And chances are, until this moment, you'd never even heard of them. Before we dive into this story, if you care about animals and want to see more stories like this, stories that actually matter and need to be told, hit that subscribe button right now. It helps me keep making these videos and spreading awareness about animals that desperately need our attention. Seriously, it makes a huge difference. Alright, let's talk about pangolins. This is the pangolin, the only mammal on Earth covered in scales. An animal so unique, so bizarre, so evolutionarily distinct that it has its own taxonomic order. An animal that's been walking this planet for 80 million years, and we're watching it disappear in real time. This is their story, and it needs to be told before it's too late. Picture a tropical forest in Central Africa. Night is falling. The air is thick and humid. In the leaf litter, something is moving. At first you might think it's a pine cone, or maybe an artichoke that grew legs. But as it moves into a patch of moonlight, you see something that doesn't quite make sense. It's an animal, about the size of a house cat, though some species get much larger. Its entire body is covered in overlapping scales that look like armor plating. Not skin, not fur, scales, like a reptile. But this is a mammal. It walks on its hind legs, using its thick tail for balance, with its front claws held up almost delicately. Those claws are massive, curved, sharp, designed for digging. They look dangerous, but this animal has never hurt anyone. It can't. It doesn't have teeth. This is a pangolin, and it's one of the strangest creatures you'll ever see. There are 8 species of pangolin, 4 in Africa, 4 in Asia. They range in size from about 3 pounds to over 70 pounds, depending on the species. But they all share the same basic design, a body covered in keratin scales, a long sticky tongue, powerful digging claws, and absolutely no way to defend themselves except one trick. When threatened, a pangolin rolls into a ball. That's it. That's the entire defense strategy. Those scales overlap to create an almost impenetrable sphere. The edges are sharp enough to cut a predator's mouth. Even lions and leopards struggle to get through a fully rolled-up pangolin. The muscles that hold them in this position are incredibly strong. You could try to pry one open and fail. For millions of years, this worked perfectly. Pangolins had few natural predators. They lived their quiet nocturnal lives, eating ants and termites, raising their babies, and surviving just fine. And then, humans invented tools, and metal snares, and trafficking networks. Now, that defensive ball makes them the easiest animal in the world to catch. They don't run, they don't bite, they don't fight, they just curl up and wait for the danger to pass. But the danger doesn't pass. It picks them up and puts them in a bag. Let's talk about what makes pangolins so unique, because you need to understand what we're losing. First, those scales. They're made of keratin, the same material as your fingernails and hair, but arranged in this overlapping armor-like pattern, they're incredibly tough. A pangolin's scales make up about 20% of its total body weight. That's like a human walking around, wearing 30 pounds of armor all the time. The scales aren't just protection. When a pangolin walks, the scales make a soft clicking sound as they move against each other. In the quiet of the forest at night, you can sometimes hear a pangolin before you see it, this strange, rhythmic clicking coming from the darkness. Baby pangolins are born with soft scales that harden within days. When they're very young, they ride on their mother's tail, clinging to her scales as she walks. It's one of the most adorable things in nature, a tiny scaled baby holding onto its scaled mother like a backpack. Now, let's talk about that tongue. A pangolin's tongue is absurdly long. In some species, it can be longer than the animal's entire body. When not in use, it retracts all the way back into the chest cavity, near the last pair of ribs. Yes, you read that right. The tongue is so long that it's stored in the chest. The tongue is covered in sticky saliva produced by enormous salivary glands. When a pangolin finds a termite mound or ant nest, it tears into it with those powerful claws, then extends its tongue deep into the tunnels. The insects stick to the tongue, and the pangolin pulls them back into its mouth. No teeth, just tongue. A pangolin can eat up to 70 million ants and termites per year. That's not a typo. 70 million insects per pangolin. They're vacuum cleaners of the insect world, and they play a crucial role in controlling ant and termite populations, which would otherwise devastate vegetation. Pangolins have no teeth, which means they've had to evolve other ways to process their food. Instead of chewing, they swallow small stones, gastroliths. These stones sit in their stomach and help grind up the insects they've eaten, basically turning their stomach into a mill. They have incredibly powerful stomach acid and a unique digestive system adapted specifically for breaking down the tough exoskeletons of insects. Some researchers believe pangolins' stomach enzymes could have medical applications, though studying this is difficult because pangolins are so rare now. Their sense of smell is excellent. They can detect ant and termite colonies underground and track them across long distances. But their eyesight is poor. They're nocturnal and spend most of their time in dark burrows or forests, so they rely more on smell and hearing. Speaking of burrows, pangolins are expert diggers. Those claws that look so delicate when they're walking. They can tear through dirt, clay, even termite mounds that are rock hard. Pangolins dig extensive burrow systems where they sleep during the day and raise their young. Some species of pangolin are also excellent climbers. The long-tailed pangolin and the white-bellied pangolin have prehensile tails that they use to grip branches. They can climb trees to reach arboreal ant nests, hanging upside down by their tail while they feed. Watching a scaled mammal climb a tree is surreal. It looks wrong somehow, like watching a pine cone go for a stroll in the canopy. Pangolins are solitary animals. Males and females only meet to mate, and even that interaction is brief. After mating, the female is on her own. Pregnancy lasts about 3 to 5 months, depending on the species. The female gives birth to a single baby. Twins are extremely rare. That baby pangolin, called a pup or pangopup, is born in the safety of the mother's burrow. For the first few weeks, the baby stays hidden in the burrow while the mother goes out to forage. When it's strong enough, it starts riding on her tail or back, learning the world from the safety of her scales. The mother is incredibly protective. If threatened while carrying her baby, she'll curl around it, creating a double layer of armored protection. Predators would have to get through her scales to reach the baby, which is nearly impossible. She nurses the baby for about 3 months, though it starts eating insects much earlier. She teaches it how to find food, how to dig, how to detect danger. This learning period is crucial. Pangolins aren't born knowing how to survive. They learn from their mothers. By about 2 years old, the young pangolin is independent and goes off to find its own territory. If it's female, it might establish a range overlapping with its mother's. If male, it will search for unclaimed territory. In the wild, pangolins can live 15 to 20 years. That's a long time for an animal their size. They grow slowly, reproduce slowly, have only one baby at a time, and take years to reach sexual maturity. This is called a slow life history strategy. It works great when your population is stable and predation is low. You don't need to have lots of babies quickly because most of your offspring will survive to adulthood. But it's a disaster when you're being hunted by humans, because pangolins can't reproduce fast enough to replace the ones being taken. And they're being taken by the millions. Let's talk about the trafficking crisis, because this is where the story gets dark. Pangolin trafficking is driven by 2 main markets: traditional medicine and luxury food. In some traditional medicine systems, particularly in parts of Asia, pangolin scales are believed to have medicinal properties. They're ground into powder and used in treatments for everything from arthritis to cancer to lactation problems in new mothers. Here's the thing. Pangolin scales are made of keratin, the same stuff as your fingernails. They have no special properties, Eating ground-up pangolin scales is literally the same as chewing your own fingernails. Multiple scientific studies have confirmed this. There is zero medical benefit. But the belief persists, and where there's demand, there's supply. Pangolin meat is also considered a delicacy in some regions. It's served at expensive restaurants as a status symbol. Eating pangolin shows you can afford rare exotic food. It's about wealth and prestige, not taste or nutrition. The prices are staggering. Pangolin scales can sell for hundreds of dollars per kilogram on the black market. A whole pangolin can fetch thousands of dollars. For poor villagers in rural Africa or Asia, finding a pangolin can represent months of income. So they hunt. They set snares near burrows. They dig pangolins out of their homes. They roll them up in bags and sell them to middlemen, who sell them to traffickers, who smuggle them across borders to buyers willing to pay. And the pangolins, they don't survive this process. Most die in transport, crushed in crates, suffocated, dehydrated. The ones that make it to their destination are killed for their scales and meat. Between 2000 and 2019, it's estimated that over 1 million pangolins were trafficked. Some experts think the real number is much higher because most trafficking goes unreported. 1 million individuals of a slow-breeding species in less than 20 years. The math is brutal. Pangolin populations can't sustain this level of harvesting. In many regions, they've already disappeared entirely. In others, they're so rare that finding one is newsworthy. Here's what makes this even more heartbreaking. Pangolins are gentle. They've never hurt anyone. They don't damage crops. They don't attack livestock. They just eat insects and mind their own business. When researchers handle pangolins for tagging or health checks, the pangolins curl up but don't struggle much. They seem almost trusting, in a way, like they don't understand that humans might hurt them. Conservationists who work with rescued pangolins talk about their personalities, how curious they are, how some individuals are shy while others are bold, how they seem to recognize their caretakers and relax around familiar people. There are videos of rescued pangolins being bottle-fed, walking around rehabilitation centers, uncurling to investigate new things. They're adorable and weird, and completely harmless. And we're killing them by the millions for superstition and status. Every major conservation organization now lists pangolins as critically endangered. All 8 species are protected under international law. Hunting them, selling them, or transporting them across borders is illegal almost everywhere. And yet the trafficking continues, because the demand is there and the money is enormous, and enforcement is difficult in remote areas where pangolins live. Some countries have increased penalties for pangolin trafficking. In some places, it now carries the same sentence as drug trafficking or murder. Smugglers caught with pangolins face decades in prison. It's helping, but not enough. Not fast enough. But there's hope, and that's what this part of the story is about. Before we get into the incredible people fighting to save pangolins, quick thing, if you're not subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. These videos take a lot of work to research and create, and every subscription genuinely motivates me to keep going. It tells me these stories matter to you. So, if you want more content like this, subscribe. It really helps. Alright, back to the pangolins. Around the world, people are fighting to save pangolins. Conservationists, scientists, law enforcement, and even former poachers are working together to pull this species back from the edge. Let's talk about the heroes. In Vietnam, there's an organization called Save Vietnam's Wildlife. They run one of the world's few pangolin rehabilitation centers. When authorities seize trafficked pangolins, this is where they come. Many arrive in terrible condition, dehydrated, starving, injured, traumatized. Some have had their scales partially removed while still alive. Others have been kept in tiny cages for weeks. The staff at these centers work around the clock to save them. They provide medical care, proper nutrition, and slowly help the pangolins recover. It's delicate work. Pangolins are notoriously difficult to keep in captivity. They stress easily, refuse to eat, and often die even when receiving the best care. But some survive. And when they're healthy enough, they're released back into protected areas. There's a pangolin named Lucky who became famous in conservation circles. She was found in a smuggler's bag, barely alive. The rescuers didn't think she'd make it through the night, but she did. And over months of careful rehabilitation, she recovered. When they released her back into the wild, they fitted her with a tracking collar to monitor her progress. Lucky not only survived, she thrived. She established a territory, found food, and eventually had a baby. That baby represents hope. One more pangolin in the wild. One small step back from extinction. Stories like Lucky's are rare. For every pangolin that's rescued and successfully released, hundreds die in the trafficking chain. But these stories matter because they prove it's possible. They show that with enough effort and resources, we can save individual animals. Now we need to save the species. One of the most effective strategies has been community-based conservation. In many areas where pangolins live, local people are poor. They hunt pangolins because the money is desperately needed. You can't just tell someone not to hunt when their children are hungry and a pangolin represents more money than they'd make in months of work. So conservation groups are trying a different approach, making pangolins worth more alive than dead. They hire local people as wildlife guides and rangers. They train them to monitor pangolin populations, track movements, and protect them from poachers. Suddenly, the same people who might have hunted pangolins are now being paid to protect them. They create alternative income sources. Ecotourism, when done responsibly, can bring money into communities. People will pay to visit areas where rare animals live, even if they don't see the animals. Just knowing you're walking in pangolin habitat is enough for some wildlife enthusiasts. They provide education. Many people who hunt pangolins don't know how endangered they are. They don't know about the slow reproduction rates or the scale of the trafficking. When they learn, many are willing to stop hunting and even help protect the species. In South Africa, there's a program called the Pangolin Conservation Initiative. They work with local communities to reduce human-wildlife conflict and create economic incentives for conservation. They've documented increasing pangolin sightings in areas where they were rarely seen before, a sign that protection is working. Law enforcement has also stepped up efforts dramatically. International organizations like Interpol and CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, have made pangolin trafficking a priority. They coordinate cross-border operations, share intelligence, and support local authorities in enforcement. There have been some massive seizures. In 2019, Singapore authorities intercepted a shipping container that was supposed to contain frozen beef. Inside, they found 14 tons of pangolin scales. 14 tons, representing approximately 36,000 dead pangolins in a single shipment. Similar seizures happen regularly. Containers of scales hidden in shipments of fish, wood, or furniture. Live pangolins stuffed into luggage at airports. Trucks carrying hundreds of frozen pangolin bodies. Each seizure represents a small victory. Those particular pangolins won't reach the market. But it also represents the scale of the problem. For every shipment caught, how many get through? Some countries have started using technology to fight trafficking. DNA testing can determine where pangolins were poached, helping authorities track trafficking routes. Camera traps and drones help monitor protected areas. Even artificial intelligence is being used to analyze online marketplaces where pangolin products are sold. There's also a push to reduce demand, which is ultimately the only way to truly stop the trafficking. Education campaigns in countries where pangolin products are consumed try to spread awareness. They explain that pangolin scales have no medicinal value. They show the conservation crisis. They appeal to cultural pride and environmental responsibility. Some campaigns feature celebrities and influencers speaking out against pangolin consumption. When famous people use their platforms to highlight the issue, it reaches audiences that traditional conservation messages might not. There's also work being done with traditional medicine practitioners. Some are open to finding alternatives to pangolin scales. Others are actively speaking out, saying that using endangered species goes against the principles of harmony with nature that underpin traditional medicine. It's slow work. Cultural beliefs and practices don't change overnight. But there are signs of progress. Surveys show increasing awareness, and in some markets, demand is starting to decline. Young people, especially, are rejecting the use of wildlife products. They see it as outdated, unnecessary, and harmful. As this generation grows up and gains influence, attitudes may shift significantly. Let's talk about the history of human-pangolin relationships, because it hasn't always been about trafficking. In many African cultures, pangolins have held special significance for centuries. Some groups considered them sacred animals, messengers between the human and spirit worlds. Killing a pangolin was taboo. Doing so would bring bad luck or spiritual harm. In some traditions, if someone accidentally killed a pangolin, they had to perform cleansing rituals. The animal would be buried with ceremony, much like a human funeral. This cultural reverence protected pangolins for generations. Unfortunately, as traditional beliefs have weakened and economic pressures have increased, many of these taboos have faded. The protection they once provided is disappearing. In other cultures, pangolins appear in folklore and stories. They're often portrayed as wise, mysterious creatures who know secrets of the earth. Their nocturnal habits and solitary nature made them seem magical. There are legends about pangolins leading people to hidden treasures or revealing medicinal plants. Some stories say that pangolins can predict rain or earthquakes because they're so connected to the earth through their burrowing. These stories reflect a respect for pangolins as special creatures. It's tragic that this respect hasn't translated into protection in the modern world. In Asia, the relationship has been more complicated. Pangolins appear in traditional medicine texts dating back centuries, but historical use was limited. Pangolins were rare and hard to catch, so they were used sparingly if at all. The explosion in demand is recent, driven by increasing wealth in certain countries. As more people could afford expensive traditional remedies, demand for pangolin products skyrocketed. Ironically, in traditional Chinese medicine theory, using endangered species is considered inappropriate. The philosophy emphasizes balance and harmony with nature. Driving a species to extinction is the opposite of harmony. Some traditional medicine practitioners are now speaking out, saying that modern pangolin trafficking contradicts the core principles of their practice. They're advocating for sustainable, alternative ingredients. Now, the question you might be wondering, can you eat pangolin? Technically, yes. People do. That's part of the problem. But should you? Absolutely not. And here's why. First, it's illegal almost everywhere. Possessing, buying, selling, or consuming pangolin products can result in severe legal penalties. Second, it's dangerous. Pangolins can carry diseases that transfer to humans. There's been research suggesting pangolins may have been an intermediate host in the chain that led to COVID-19, though this is still being studied. Regardless, eating wild animals carries serious disease risks. Third, and most importantly, it's driving a species to extinction. Every pangolin eaten is one less in the wild, one less breeding individual, one step closer to losing these animals forever. As for the taste, accounts vary. Some describe it as similar to pork, others say it's gamey and tough. But the taste is irrelevant. The cost, ecological, ethical, and potentially medical, is too high. The same goes for pangolin scales. They're keratin. You could achieve the exact same effect by eating your own fingernails, which would be free, legal, and wouldn't kill an endangered animal. There are inspiring individual stories of people changing their relationship with pangolins. In Vietnam, there's a former hunter named Nguyen Van Thai. For years, he trapped pangolins and sold them to traffickers. It was good money, and he didn't think much about it. Then he attended a community meeting where conservationists explained how endangered pangolins had become. They showed pictures of baby pangolins riding on their mothers' backs. They explained the slow reproduction rates and the trafficking crisis. Something clicked for Thai. He realized he'd been part of destroying something precious. He stopped hunting pangolins and volunteered to help protect them instead. Now he works as a ranger, using his knowledge of pangolin behavior to find and protect them. He teaches other former hunters to do the same. He says he's catching up on karma. For every pangolin he took, he wants to save 2. Stories like this show that people can change. that with the right information and opportunities, even those who were part of the problem can become part of the solution. Scientists are also working hard to understand pangolins better, though research is challenging because they're so rare and difficult to study. We still don't know basic things about their ecology. How long do they really live in the wild? How large are their territories? How do they communicate? What's their full role in the ecosystem? Camera trap studies have revealed surprising behaviors. Pangolins swimming across rivers. Pangolins walking remarkable distances in a single night. Interactions between pangolins that suggest they might be less solitary than previously thought. Researchers are trying to figure out how to breed pangolins in captivity. This is incredibly difficult. Pangolins often refuse to mate in captivity, and even when they do, pregnancy success rates are low and infant mortality is high. Only a handful of facilities worldwide have successfully bred pangolins. Each birth is celebrated as a major achievement. If we can figure out captive breeding, we could potentially create insurance populations, backup populations that could help restore wild numbers. But most conservationists agree, captive breeding isn't the answer. The real solution is protecting them in the wild, in their natural habitats, living their natural lives. There's also research into pangolin ecology that could help conservation. Understanding exactly what habitats they prefer, what factors influence their survival, and how they respond to different threats can help design better protection strategies. Some researchers are working on developing non-invasive monitoring techniques, analyzing pangolin scat to understand their diet and health, using environmental DNA, genetic material left in soil and water, to detect pangolin presence without having to find the animals themselves. These techniques could help estimate population sizes more accurately and identify critical habitats that need protection. So here's the question. Why should you care about pangolins? You've probably never seen one in real life. You might never see one. They live on different continents, in remote places, and even where they exist, they're rare and nocturnal. They don't affect your daily life in any obvious way. Why does it matter if they disappear? Real quick before I answer that, if you've made it this far in the pangolin story and you're not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button. It genuinely keeps me motivated to make these videos. Knowing people care about these stories, that they're actually watching and learning, that's what makes the research and effort worth it. So please, subscribe. It means more than you know. Okay, why should you care about pangolins? Let me tell you why. First, there's the ecological reason. Pangolins eat tens of millions of insects per year. They're one of nature's primary controllers of ant and termite populations. Without them, these insects would multiply exponentially, devastating vegetation and agriculture. In areas where pangolin populations have crashed, farmers have reported increased termite damage to crops and structures. The connection isn't always immediately obvious, but it's there. Remove a key predator, and the ecosystem shifts in unexpected ways. Pangolins also aerate soil through their digging, which helps plant growth and water infiltration. They create burrows that other animals use for shelter. They're part of a complex web of interactions that keeps ecosystems healthy. Take them out, and that web starts to unravel. But honestly, the ecological argument, while important, isn't what moves most people. So let me give you the real reason. We should care about pangolins because they represent something important about who we are as a species. Pangolins have been on Earth for 80 million years. They survived the asteroid impact that killed the dinosaurs. They survived ice ages, continental drift, climate changes, and countless other species going extinct around them. They survived all of that, only to be pushed to the edge of extinction by us. In just a few decades, not because they're threats or pests, not even for real food when people are starving, but for luxury goods and superstitious beliefs. If we let pangolins go extinct, it says something about us. It says we value temporary profit over permanent loss. It says we'll destroy something unique and irreplaceable for reasons that don't even make sense. It says we're not paying attention, that we don't care about things that don't directly affect us, that we're willing to let wonder and strangeness disappear from the world because it's easier than changing our behavior. And once they're gone forever. No amount of money or regret or scientific advancement will bring them back. The world will be permanently less interesting, less diverse, less magical. Is that the world we want to leave for future generations? One where children learn about pangolins the way we learn about dodos and passenger pigeons, as things that used to exist before we destroyed them? But here's the thing. It's not too late. Not yet. Pangolins are critically endangered, but they're not extinct. There are still populations in the wild. There are still babies being born. There are still individuals like Lucky, surviving and breeding and giving us a chance to fix this. We know what needs to happen. The solutions aren't mysterious or impossible. We need to reduce demand. We need stronger enforcement. We need better protection of habitats. We need community-based conservation that gives people alternatives to poaching. We need continued research to understand pangolin ecology better. And we need people to care, because nothing changes without people deciding that it matters. So, what can you do? Because I know that's the question. You're watching this video probably thousands of miles from where pangolins live. What possible difference can you make? Here's what. First, spread awareness. Share this video. Talk about pangolins. Most people have never heard of them, and you can't care about something you don't know exists. The more people know, the more pressure there is on governments and organizations to act. Second, support conservation organizations that work to protect pangolins. There are groups doing incredible work on the ground, rescuing trafficked animals, protecting habitats, working with communities. They need funding. Even small donations add up when enough people contribute. Third, if you travel to regions where pangolin products are sold, don't buy them. Don't support the market. And if you see them being sold, report it to local authorities or conservation organizations. Tourism dollars have power. Use them responsibly. Fourth, support policies and politicians that prioritize wildlife protection and environmental conservation. Vote. Contact representatives. Make it clear that conservation matters to you. And fifth, just care. Pay attention to stories like this. Make time for wonder at the weird and beautiful things that exist in our world. Teach kids about pangolins. Let yourself be moved by the tragedy and inspired by the hope. Individual actions feel small, but they're not. Every person who learns about pangolins and decides they matter is one more voice in the fight to save them. Enough voices, and things change. There's a concept in conservation called shifting baseline syndrome. It means that each generation accepts the state of nature they grew up with as normal, even if it's already degraded compared to previous generations. Your grandparents might remember when forests were fuller, when rivers had more fish, when wildlife was more abundant. To them, the current state seems diminished. But to you, this is just how things are. You don't miss what you never knew, and your children will grow up thinking the world you know is normal, even as species disappear and ecosystems degrade further. Unless we stop it. Unless we decide that this is the generation that says no more. No more accepting loss as inevitable. No more letting species slip away while we watch. Pangolins can be one of the species we save. They can be one of the success stories, the animals that were brought back from the edge because people decided it mattered. We've done it before. Bald eagles were nearly extinct. Now they're thriving. Grey whales were hunted almost to extinction. Populations have recovered. Gorillas, tigers, giant pandas, all still endangered, but stable or increasing because of dedicated conservation efforts. It's possible. It takes time, money, and commitment. But it's possible. Pangolins can be on that list. Or they can be on the other list, the extinct species that we could have saved but didn't. The choice is ours. Right now. This generation. I want to leave you with one image. Imagine a forest at night, years from now. Moonlight filters through the trees. In the leaf litter, there's a soft clicking sound. A pangolin waddles into view, scales glinting. Behind her, clinging to her tail, is a baby pangolin. She's teaching it to find food, to dig, to survive. They're still here. They made it. Because enough people decided it mattered. Because we changed our behavior, protected their habitats, stopped the trafficking. This future is possible. It's within reach. but only if we fight for it. The pangolin is one of the most unique mammals on Earth, the only one with scales, a creature from a lineage 80 million years old, an animal that looks like it was designed by someone with a wild imagination and a disregard for conventional mammal design. It's gentle, it's harmless, it plays a crucial role in its ecosystem, and it's being destroyed by human greed and ignorance. But it doesn't have to be this way. We can be the generation that saved the pangolins, that looked at the trafficking crisis and said, "Not on our watch." That took action, made changes, and pulled these animals back from extinction. We can be the ones who made sure that click-click-clicking sound continues in forests for generations to come. That future generations can know pangolins not as a tragedy, but as a triumph. As proof that when we pay attention, when we care, we can fix what we've broken. The pangolin doesn't know it's in danger. It doesn't know millions of its kind have been killed. It's just trying to find ants and termites, trying to raise its baby, trying to survive. It can't save itself, but we can save it. And we should, because a world with pangolins in it is a better, stranger, more wonderful world than one without them. Let's make sure they stay. If learning about pangolins moved you, please subscribe. I'm not kidding when I say it really encourages me. Every time I see that subscriber count go up, it reminds me that these videos matter, that people actually care about these animals. It's what keeps me going when the research gets tough or the editing takes forever. There are so many more incredible animals out there with stories that need to be told, some thriving, some struggling, all worth knowing about. And I want to tell every single one of those stories. But I need to know you're with me. So hit that subscribe button for the pangolins, for the animals we haven't covered yet. And honestly, for me too. It makes a real difference. Drop a comment and let me know, what animal should we cover next? What other species needs more attention? I read every comment. Thanks for watching. Thanks for caring. And thanks for subscribing. If you haven't already, now's the time. Let's save the pangolins together.